Welcome to Real Good News, a conversation about local action for climate care. I'm Paul Westland with the Christian Action Group of St. Paul United Methodist Church here in Louisville. Christian Action is one of the hosts of this evening's event. We're going to start with music from Louisville musician John Gage.
I live on a big blue bar. I never do dream I might fall. But even the day that I do, I'll jump off and smile back at you. I don't even know where we are. They tell us we're circling a star. Celestial creatures of light. We're children of love, shining bright. We walk where evening shadows wash the shore, with radiant sunsets pure as gold. Divine love shines in starlight evermore. Creation's power and beauty unfold. We're learning as children to let go, surrender to the sacred river's flow, looking within for what we know. Spirit will guide us as we grow. We're riding the big blue ball. We never do dream we might fall. Universal love surrounds us all, sustaining all creatures, great and small. Oh, la la la, la 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 la, la la la. We live on a big blue ball, and universal love surrounds us all.
Thank you, John Gage. We'll hear from him again at the end of tonight's program. Welcome again to anyone who might have joined us in the last couple minutes, and thank you for joining us here to hear about how you can make a difference in the climate crisis. Again, I'm Paul Westland with the Christian Action Group of St. Paul United Methodist Church. Our group is a host of tonight's discussion, and I want to mention two other hosts who will be introduced later. One is the 100% Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville. The other is Dawn Cooley with Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light. Thank you so much for making this possible. We'll have time for questions and comments near the end of tonight's event. You could submit them anytime during the program by typing them into the chat. I'll also mention that this event is being recorded. Next, I'd like to introduce the MC for tonight, Marilyn Stoner. Marilyn is one of the founding members of the Christian Action Group of St. Paul United Methodist Church and headed the planning committee for this event. She's a retired psychotherapist, and for the past 12 years, she's been leading retreats and workshops on eco-justice and social justice using storytelling, guided imagery, and meditation. Marilyn, you want to get us started?
Well, is it my turn?
It's your turn. You're on.
I have no idea what you just said, Paul, because my computer froze up. I don't know. Okay. So here we go with what I wanted to say, which is to say hello to all you beautiful people and thank you so much for coming. Paul Westland, Graham Donovan, and I are excited to host, along with Dawn Cooley, the illustrious group of very hard-working folks from 100% Renewable Energy Alliance, Louisville. Paul, Graham, and I are among a larger group of founding members of the St. Paul United Methodist Church Action Committee that was formed just 11 months ago. Briefly, both Paul and Graham have had long careers in fields closely related to care for the earth. Paul grew up in Minnesota and has spent his career as a writer and communications specialist with electronic cooperatives, including 20 years as editor of Kentucky Living magazine. He has a new book out called Small Business, Big Heart: How One Family Redefined the Bottom Line. He and his wife, Debbie, have lived in Louisville for most of their adult lives. You'll hear from Graham Donovan later on in the program. He and his wife, Jane, have lived in Louisville for just 3 years. He grew up on a sheep farm in New Zealand, and as a teenager was a sheep obstetrician, helping hundreds of ewes give birth to lambs in the spring. His adult career has spanned many years in agricultural development in the Middle East, South Asia, and Africa. Now, are we ready to introduce Margaret, Dawn? Is that good? Okay. Now I would like to introduce our first speaker, and that is my good friend, Margaret Stewart, whom I've known for a long time. She's going to give us an overview of the resolution that the Council passed back on February 6th. Margaret grew up in the Birmingham, Alabama area and has lived most of her adult life in Louisville. She's was an English teacher, a poet, passionate activist now for the environment for many years. She says that her awakening to the climate crisis happened many years ago when she first learned of the mountaintop removal going on in Eastern Kentucky. Margaret is one of the founding members of 100% Real. Margaret, I've known you for a long time and I could go on, but I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Marilyn. To start us off today, I want to share the story of how Louisville's resolution for 100% renewable energy came to pass. Once upon a time, in September of 2018, a group of climate activists here in Louisville drafted a resolution for renewable energy and held a rally downtown where we presented our resolution to David James, president of the Metro Council, who agreed to sponsor it. Great. Now what? How are we going to get the entire Metro Council to pay attention to the issue of climate change and pass a resolution for renewable energy? A core group of people who organized the rally a couple of years ago continued to meet to figure out what to do. We made revisions to the original draft. We got folks to sign petitions and postcards. We volunteered to take turns giving short addresses to the Metro Council at their meeting. We created a feasibility and affordability study to present to the council. We had another rally. Month after month after month, we kept on keeping on. We scheduled appointments to speak with individuals and council members. We arranged for Cincinnati's energy manager to make a presentation to the Metro Council describing successful actions their city is already taking. Somewhere along the way, we named ourselves 100% Real, the Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville. And we created and distributed yard signs. With the help of a generous donor, we put up billboards around the city, and we demonstrated outside of the Metro Council building. Throughout this time, we experienced a number of setbacks. Our resolution got stuck in committee for ages. The city's budget crisis took all the council's attention. David James dropped his sponsorship. We had to withdraw the resolution. It seemed we were getting nowhere, but we kept on keeping on. Brandon Cohn ultimately agreed to sponsor the resolution for us, and it finally moved out of committee. The Metro Council meeting of February 6th of this year, 2020, turned out to be truly memorable. Two of us, Sam Avery and I, had signed up in advance to address the council, but no one in our group had any part in planning the special presentation that coincidentally occurred on that date. An invited guest showed the council a video of wildfires raging in Australia, and he spoke of the ravages of climate change. And to the delight of everyone present, a rescue wallaby was brought in and allowed to hop around the chamber. Quite a scene, and the perfect setup for our resolution to at long last be brought up for a vote. Several council members were outspoken in their opposition, but Marcus Winkler, whom you'll hear from later, was eloquent in expressing his support. Thank you, Marcus. And Bill Hollander's co-sponsor of the resolution stated that this might be the most important decision of all that the council will make. Late in the evening, the resolution was approved, and it came to pass by a vote of 15-4. So, exactly what is this resolution for which we had worked so long and so hard? It is essentially a statement of 3 goals with a timeline. Goal 1, 100% clean, renewable electricity for Metro government operations by 2020. By 2030. Currently, almost all electricity in Louisville is coal generated. The goal here is that within 10 years, all electricity used for city government operations will be sourced from sun, wind, geothermal, or possibly bio or hydro. By the way, the cost of renewables now nationally is less than the cost of coal. Although electricity used by the Metro government accounts for a tiny portion, only about 1% of the total electricity used community-wide, the important thing is that the city will be leading by example. And the good news is that this goal is completely attainable with existing technology. Sam will speak more about this shortly. Goal 2, 100% clean renewable energy for metro government operations by 2035. Clean energy encompasses electricity, transportation, buildings, and food systems, which means not only no more coal-generated power, but also no more natural gas for city operations by 2035. Goal 3, 100% clean renewable energy community-wide by 2040. In other words, all renewables for all of us, for our residences, businesses, for heating, for cooling, everything, for everybody, everywhere in the city, 20 years from now. These goals are ambitious, but the climate clock is ticking. We have no time to waste. So, on that evening back in February, a year and a half after we first began to push for it, when the resolution was finally approved, our 100% Real team celebrated a hard-won victory. But our real work lies ahead. The resolution is just words on a page. It is non-binding. So what can we do to make its goals a reality? 100% Real has continued efforts both BC and DC. BC here means before Corona and DC during Corona. 100% Real researched and produced a document we call Louisville's Energy Future. In it, we discussed unique challenges our city and state face in transitioning from fossil fuels, and we propose specific steps that may be taken. We consider ideas like setting up PP or power purchase agreements and creating a green bank. Much work went into this document, and I strongly encourage you to check it out to learn more. For example, you're probably not aware that LG&E is operating as a fee-free monopoly franchise based on a handwritten agreement with the city drawn up back in 1890. Perhaps the city might do well to re-examine that 130-year-old agreement. Members of 100% Real will continue to expand and update our Energy Future document. We will continue to address the Metro Council. We will lobby state legislators and offer input to the Public Service Commission, which regulates utilities in Kentucky. To the extent possible, we will work with LG&E, although it's a for-profit entity that presents significant obstacles that must be overcome. We will continue our efforts also to educate and involve all citizens in transitioning to renewable energy. For many people, transitioning to renewables is a spiritual and moral imperative. This marvelous creation that cares for us needs our care. Addressing climate change is also an economic and social justice issue. The cost of inaction or delayed action will exceed the cost of action. The burdens of our fossil fuel addiction affect everyone, but fall most heavily on people of color and low income. The health of all of us is impacted. Conditions like COPD and asthma caused or aggravated by particulate matter from burning fossil fuels These conditions predispose people to worse outcomes if they contract the coronavirus. Our reliance on fossil fuels has far-reaching impacts. So let's lift up a vision of a renewable energy future with new, high-quality, clean energy jobs, a future with cleaner air, soil, water, and healthier people. Let's do all we can to pass on to our children and our children's children a livable planet. As Terry Tempest Williams has so eloquently said, the eyes of the future are looking back on us, and they are praying for us to see beyond our own time. In order for us to make our goal of 100% renewable energy a reality, 5 C's are needed. First, commitment. Commitment to do whatever it takes to free ourselves from fossil fuels. Second, and this one is essential, collective action. Climate crisis is too big to address on an individual basis alone. We must join together to act in community with others. Third, continuous effort. To overcome resistance, we must persevere. We got to keep on keeping on. Next, creativity. Creativity to overcome obstacles, creativity to develop new solutions. And one more, we must act quickly. The climate clock is ticking. Later in the program, you'll hear from Nancy Givens about what is happening elsewhere. If other communities can go renewable, Louisville can too. Then, when at last it comes to pass that Louisville actually achieves our goal of becoming a 100% renewable energy city, we can add one more C to our list. We can celebrate. Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ellen Trahan of the Louisville Sustainability Council, who will share a few words about the recent Louisville Sustainability Summit. Ellen?
I don't think Ellen made it with us today. Ellen, if you're here, can you raise your hands? Does anybody see her? No. All right, I think we can move on. Marilyn?
Okay, we'll move right along then. And thank you so much, Margaret. That was wonderful to hear. And so much work went into all of that. We really appreciate that. Sam Avery is our next speaker. He grew up on Long Island and has lived in Louisville with his wife, Bonnie, for most of his adult life, also in Hart County. He is a founding member, of course, of 100% Real, but his work and activism for peace and the environment goes back for many, many years before Real. He has been a trainer for activists in civil disobedience and has himself been arrested a number of times in his work to bring attention to climate change issues. Among other pursuits, he has been a solar panel installer and an editor of 9 books. No, an author, I'm sorry, not an editor, an author of 9 books on meditations, physics, consciousness, and the environment. His latest book I have right here in my hands, and I'm going to show it to you. Here it is, The Carbon Boycott. And I can't read backwards. What is it? A Path to Freedom from Fossil Fuels. It's a great book. It's your primer for this whole movement. Louisville is featured in here along with Cincinnati. So I highly recommend it. I've started reading it. It's now out at Carmichael's and probably Amazon and Kindle as well. It's just come out this month or last month. Okay. Okay. So Sam, we've marched together a lot, many times for these causes, and I could go on. And if it weren't for the time restrictions that we have, I would, but I won't. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marilyn. I appreciate it. And thank you, Margaret, for an overview of just exactly what this resolution is all about. I'm going to talk mainly about the first phase. That's the first goal, which is renewable electricity for city operations, for the city government itself. I think we can do this best by a combination of rooftop solar and utility scale solar. Now, solar energy is not the only form of renewable energy, but for the first phase, this thing we have to do in 10 years, produce enough electricity for the city government, the best way, I think, is through this combination. Now, rooftop solar is what I know most about because I was a solar installer for 12 years. And I can tell you that the average family house with good solar orientation can produce all of its energy for heating, cooling, lighting, water heating, appliances, even enough power to run an electric car or two. So this is very encouraging. It means a lot of us can produce all of our own energy right in our homes. But of course, not everybody has a single family house, and a lot of single family houses are not properly oriented for the sun. And then again, there's schools and stores and factories and libraries and government buildings, which may or may not be able to make their own electricity from rooftop solar. And for that reason, we're going to need a utility scale solar installation in order to make this first goal of the renewable energy resolution. Now, the city government uses about 100 million kilowatt hours a year. Now, to produce that much power, we're going to need 218,000 solar panels. And that's going to cover a 400-acre area, somewhere outside the city. This scale, this is happening all over the country now, this scale of solar installations. It's going to cost around $136 million. Now, you know, we're not going to find that in the city government. It's not in the budget, I can tell you that. But it doesn't have to be. And I'm going to tell you why it doesn't have to be in a minute here. But first, I want to put that amount of money in perspective. Louisville Gas and Electric is now proposing to spend $400 million, 3 times as much, to upgrade its coal-fired power plant on the Ohio River. So we could build 3 times as much solar with that amount of money. Now, that upgrade, I should add, is for water quality at that plant. It's going to be sold as an environmental measure, and it is an environmental measure. But the problem with it is that right now, LG&E has a lousy, old fossil fuel facility. And with this upgrade, they're going to have a better lousy fossil fuel coal-fired facility. So what we need to be doing is thinking about what we're going to invest in for our future. You may wonder sometimes why it's so difficult for us to make the transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy. It's because all our infrastructure now is for fossil fuel, gas stations, oil refineries, pipelines, you name it. It's all geared toward fossil fuel. So when you flip the switch or jump in your car or adjust the thermostat, you're plugging right into the fossil fuel economy. And that's because years ago, people made decisions to build fossil fuel infrastructure. And so whatever we build now is what we're going to have 40, 50, 60 years from now. And we don't have 40, 50, 60 years. We have 10, 20, 30 years in order to make this transition. The best science in the world is telling us we have to completely stop burning fossil fuel by 2050. We're not talking about reducing emissions here. We're talking about eliminating emissions. So if we're going to do that, we have to build the right infrastructure now. So this infrastructure for Louisville city government, it's $136 million, but there are ways that we can finance this without dipping into the city government budget. One way would be to sell solar bonds. A lot of people are going to be interested in this. This is going to be a high profile project. And a lot of people are going to want to invest in a renewable energy future and with making a return on it later on at some point. That's one way. Another way we could do it is through what Margaret mentioned was a PPA, or a power purchase agreement, where the city government, rather than building this itself, contracts with a solar developer who builds the system, pays for the system, and operates the system in exchange for a guaranteed income stream over a 20, 30-year period. So we could have solar energy without putting a nickel down. And a lot of cities, including Cincinnati, are doing this now. So there's no technological reason not to do this. There's no financial reason not to do this. I should mention also that this system that I'm proposing here right now will pay for itself in 10.6 years. So it means that that's the problem with solar, is you have to build it, you have to pay for it up front. After you pay for it up front, there's virtually no operating cost. So after 10.6 years, it will have made enough electricity to pay for itself, but it'll continue to make essentially free electricity without any fuel for another 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So whoever builds this, whether it's the city itself or some solar developer, is going to make a lot of money in the long run, as will you if you put rooftop solar on your own house. So this is what we at 100% Real, Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville, this is what we're proposing as a means of implementing the Renewable Energy Resolution. We're proposing this to the Metro Council, and we would like your help. We hope that those of you who live in Louisville will be contacting your council representatives. And if you don't know how to do that, I'm going to tell you right now. Google up Louisville Metro Council districts. Maybe Dawn is going to put that on the chat box. Okay, you can do it with the website Dawn's going to put there, or you can just Google up Louisville Metro Council districts. Now, there are other websites for the city, but this is a good one because right at the top of that, there's a box where you can enter in your address, and it'll tell you who your representative is, where your district is, and also have a direct link to that representative's email. So you can say something like, hey, we want to support the renewable energy resolution. We want to support the idea of a utility scale solar installation for the city, and whatever else you want to say. So we can do this thing. We can see from here how to do phase 1 of this thing. I can't right now see how we're going to do phase 2 and 3. They're further off in the future. I'm not sure how. Now, phase 3 is, they're talking about 100 times as much energy as this project I've just mentioned here. I don't know how we're going to do that. But I can tell you that if we build phase 1, 10 years from now, we're going to be able to see over the horizon. We're going to know a lot more about renewable energy then. So the way to do this is to get our feet wet, get in there, build this phase 1, and then we're going to see how to proceed in the same direction on a more massive scale in between the 10-year and the 20-year period. But I should say that this is not just about solar panels. It's not just about kilowatt hours. It's about looking at the world the way it is. It's about developing a consciousness of what's actually happening out there and adjusting how we live to that new reality. For so long now, what we've been trying to do is to fit the natural world into our needs. And what we have to do now is fit our needs into the natural world. So how are we going to do this with our individual lives? Well, it's important to vote. You may have noticed we had an election a few weeks back, and I'm sure you saw how important it is to vote. But it's also important to learn how to vote with your dollars. Are you still buying gasoline? Are you still buying coal-fired electricity for your refrigerator? Are you still heating with natural gas? Of course you are. So am I. So is everybody. That's the problem. You see, we are spending our money on fossil fuel, and that sends a signal to the big oil companies and the utility companies and the coal companies to go out and dig up more of that stuff and burn more of it and keep polluting the streams and keep polluting the oceans, keep polluting the atmosphere. You see, we have to learn how to vote with our economic power. The big companies, they only sell what we buy. Okay, they're doing what we want them to do as long as we keep giving them our money. But it's very difficult to change this individual. We need to work with other people. As soon as we lock arms with other people, we develop a whole new dimension of economic power, political power, and spiritual power. And suddenly, if we congregate and aggregate, we can come together and learn how to spend our money in a way that builds the world that we want to live in. And let us keep in mind that, of course, we're running out of time here. But we do have time. We have that 10, 20, 30 years. So let's use the time that we're running out of to do what we have to do. Think of where you're going to be in 10 years. What are you going to be doing in 10 years? How are you going to heat your house? How are you going to get to work? How are you going to keep your refrigerator running? Now, 10 years from now, that's a long time. You may be able to make some major changes between then and now. And that's the time to make the change. You can't do it all tomorrow morning, but we might need to make big changes, permanent changes, not just little daily things. And we have to work together with other people. And it's also important to accentuate the positive here. It's easy to find out what's going wrong. It's easy to point our fingers at who's doing what and why that's wrong. But it's more important to find the people who are doing things that are right. It's more important to look out there and try to make a positive contribution, because this is the first truly global climate crisis that we've ever had, truly global crisis of any kind that the world has ever had. Because the atmosphere in a closed system, it doesn't matter who is doing the polluting. We're all affected by it. So this is the first time in the world that everybody has to look at the same thing and everybody has to do the same thing, which means that there are no enemies. We can't be looking at good guys and bad guys. So what we need to do is the old saying, we need to think globally and act locally. If we are able to make Louisville, Kentucky 100% carbon neutral, the rest of the world will follow. Thank you very much. And now is Marcus Winkler out there in Zoom land somewhere?
I
Do
am
we
here.
have him gone? Okay, there you
I
are.
am here.
Okay. Okay, Marcus is a representative from the 17th district in the Louisville Metro Council. He's Democratic Caucus chair, and he's also president pro tem of the council. And as Margaret mentioned, we've asked him to come here tonight because he delivered a very passionate message at a very critical time when the resolution was up for consideration, and they passed it right after that. So I think you made it happen, Marcus. So, Councilman Winkler.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you all for being here. And I am Marcus Winkler. I represent District 17, which is the East End, includes the Anchorage, Springhurst, Brownsboro corridor. Sort of that area includes Tom Sawyer Park and the Ford plant. I am the majority leader and president pro tem, which is really, I say, it's a fancy term that means that when President James has to go to the bathroom, I get to assume the president's chair. As Margaret mentioned at the beginning, we passed the resolution in our February 6th council meeting, which is actually one of the last sort of regular council meetings we had prior to the coronavirus. And I'd forgotten that was the council meeting where we had the wallaby. And it's sort of funny to think about our last normal meeting being a meeting with a wallaby, but those are the times that we are currently dealing with. But Sam asked me to come today and speak, and I appreciate the invite, and I appreciate all of the work and passion that your various groups have put behind this effort. I want to apologize that number one, it took as long as it did to move the resolution forward. I also want to apologize that it only passed 15-9. I think that's a travesty. And it should have passed 26-0, and that night there were 24 people there, so 24-0. Because I think all it does is lay out, it doesn't mandate anything. It lays out a commitment to our values. And I think as everybody in this room knows, the climate crisis is very real. We see that, the science is undeniable. And we see that happening every day through changes in our environment. And I think if nothing else, we should consider when we look at the events over the last 2 years in terms of the refugee crisis in Europe and how that fundamentally risked some of the democracies there. And that was with a few 100,000 refugees from Syria and other war-torn areas. It highlights the fragility of our social systems and what happens when you start to have millions of climate refugees and the stress that will put on governments across the world and threaten the very fabric of our societies. And so I think, the time to act is now, or really the time to act was 10 years ago. But every day that passes, is another opportunity lost. In terms of the resolution that we passed, there are some concrete steps that are taking place right now. One of the things that it calls for, and one of the best practices that we heard from Cincinnati, was the hiring of an energy manager. That position has been posted. We expect that will be filled by the end of the year. And there are some energy audits already occurring, but we expect that will continue into the coming year, and that once that energy manager is on board, and from what I understand, we have a fantastic pool of applicants. But once that individual is on board, I think that will really create the roadmap to identify, what needs to happen first, second, and third. One of the things that Sam had asked me to touch on is what can you do to contribute? And I think one of the main things is to continue to advocate amongst the council. I think that, while the resolution is nice, as Margaret mentioned, the resolution is non-binding. It really, other than conveying our intention, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't mandate that we do anything, doesn't require us to do anything. And really, Metro Council's main role in the city is through the budget. And the budget is really where where the rubber hits the road, and we start to put dollars behind what has to happen. And so I think, as we think about going into this next year and the years following, making sure that we have advocacy as we're going through that budget process, to make sure that we're making the sorts of investments that we need to make, be it starting with rooftop solar. That's certainly something that we could or should be looking at, ensuring that any new buildings that we build are all LEED certified, and that's something that we've been doing, but we could do more. And perhaps even as we look at new vehicle and fleet purchases, are we purchasing alternative energy vehicles as well as our fleets are retired? So I think there's a number of things, and really the key there is making sure that you're staying in front of us and you're continuing to push that issue, so that we continue to make it a priority. So that's all I had to touch on. I can't stay with you throughout the duration of the program. I don't know if there's an effective way for me to answer a couple of questions, or if not, you can email me anytime. You can call my office. But if there is a way for me to answer questions, I'm more than happy to. But again, appreciate all of your advocacy, and am happy to support however I can.
Marcus Winkler, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Graham Donovan, and I'm really pleased, and we're all pleased that you're with us tonight. We appreciate that, and we really appreciate your work on the City Council, the Metro Council, and this is obviously going to continue for a very long time. This is a long-term goal. It's going to take passionate support on the City Council, the Metro Council, from now until 2040 at least and beyond. So thank you for being with us tonight. I think we might just push on and encourage people to contact you with their questions or put questions in the chat room, which we can then send to you. So thank you for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. And it's my great pleasure now to introduce our next speaker. Nancy Givens lived her early years in New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and a brief time in San Francisco. She has lived in Kentucky since 1972 and in South Central Kentucky and Louisville now for the last 6 years. She has worked in government, nonprofit, private, and corporate settings, and at Western Kentucky University for 20 years as a program administrator, grant writer, and faculty member, primarily in clean energy and sustainability, but also public health and wellness. She worked with solar installer Avery & Son for 2 years. She's a former board member of the Kentucky Solar Energy Society, a founding member of BG Green Partnership for a Sustainable Community, of Solar Over Louisville, and of course, 100% Real. Welcome, Nancy, and it's over to you. Oh, Nancy's going to talk about implementing the renewable energy plan for Louisville, and especially about getting community input. Nancy.
Thank you, Graham. Good evening to everybody here. It's really great to see so many attending and so many people interested in our goal to move Louisville to a carbon-free future. Climate scientists have made clear that we must act quickly. So passing the resolution was step one, but as Marcus Winkler said, it doesn't commit us to anything. And now comes the hard part. We must set interim goals, implement actions, monitor progress, report on progress, educate community members, and remove state and local policy and practice impediments so that we can succeed in moving beyond coal and gas to the 100% clean energy rapidly. But what I'm going to talk with you about, oh goodness, hang on a second. Dawn, can you put up the slideshow and not the notes?
Is
I'm
it
not
showing
sure.
the notes?
You put up the notes, not the slideshow.
Okay. Sorry about that. Interesting.
The PowerPoint. Ah, there you go.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm going to talk about is the big picture of what's happening, and then a bit more about each person's role in this endeavor. So although progress at times looks slow, it's hard not to be excited at the pace and reach of the renewable energy revolution now occurring nationally and globally, even in the face of the COVID crisis, persistent lack of political will, and continued subsidies to fossil fuels. This vital work for a carbon-free future is being done in countries, cities, states, and businesses worldwide, and it creates models for Louisville to be able to move quickly into a transition to a fossil fuel-free future. The report Renewables on the Rise 2020 by Environment America tells the story through data of the dramatic growth in clean energy that's now taking place in the US. Strong state renewable energy commitments have sparked this major shift toward clean energy. From 2010 to 2019 in the US, more than 30 times more solar energy was generated, 3 times more wind power. Energy efficiency programs saved 1.5 times as much electricity as in 2010. 1 million electric vehicles have been sold in the US, up from virtually none a decade earlier. Battery storage has increased 20-fold. 50 million US homes are now being powered by renewable energy. When we look at the global scale, the International Energy Agency's new report, Renewables 2020, shows that globally, wind and solar capacity will double over the next 5 years, and total installed wind and solar PV capacity is on course to surpass natural gas in 2023 and coal in 2024. This is, in fact, a revolution. And all of this comes when the world is challenged by COVID and the oil sector faces plummeting prices amid the pandemic. So the future does look bright. I want to mention a couple of international agencies that were set up expressly to accelerate the pace of change and to guide companies toward meeting zero carbon goals. RE100 brings together many of the world's most influential businesses that have committed to 100% renewable energy to report data and demand a faster market response. Its members span the globe in sectors, and together they send a powerful signal to governments and markets about the demand for renewable energy. Increasingly, businesses see the adoption of 100% renewable energy goals as a fiduciary responsibility, one that creates a business advantage and avoids future risks. The Carbon Disclosures Project runs the global disclosure system for investors, companies, cities, states, and regions to manage their environmental impacts. It has regional and local offices in 50 countries. Anyone may apply to be a member of the CDP. Reporting is voluntary and all data is free access. Its website is a treasure trove of data for anyone interested. In 2019, over 8,400 companies and 920 cities, states, and regions disclosed through the CDP. The CDP is based on the premise that data drives change. 3 areas are tracked: climate change, deforestation, and water security. Each is a global problem and requires global solutions. A 2017 CDP report shows that over 100 cities globally were already getting 70% or more of their electricity supply from clean energy. So companies are really driving renewable energy in the world. There's a rapidly growing list of companies setting and achieving zero carbon goals. These include Google, Facebook, Amazon, Walmart, Target, investor groups and banks, GM, and thousands more. I picked out just a few examples to show the pace of what's happening. Microsoft has been 100% powered by renewable energy since 2014. Apple achieved 100% renewable energy powering its global facilities across 43 countries in 2018. It also helps its manufacturing partners across the globe lower their carbon footprint. IKEA has committed to 100% net zero energy by 2030. It is also now recycling and reselling its furniture, another way to lower its carbon footprint. And here's 2 more with more local impact. Ford Motors, with its 3 plants in Louisville, has set the goal to use 100% locally sourced renewable energy for all its manufacturing plants globally by 2035. Local sourcing adds another dimension, and it has many benefits beyond the carbon savings in producing local jobs, improved health, and an economic boost to the local communities. Schneider Electric aims to be carbon neutral across its value chain by 2025 using a 3-prong approach, emphasizing carbon neutral operations, carbon neutrality with its clients, and also in developing communities. So in addition to businesses, cities are at the center of what's going on. The UN Environmental Program says that cities create 75% of global carbon emissions, primarily from buildings and transportation. To date, Europe is far outpacing the US in initiatives to create a clean, electrified future. But there are many lessons the US can learn from these other countries and cities. We see that there are plenty of existing models to draw from. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's important to note that we must not wait for markets to drive the transformation, then it will be too late. A recent report shows that at the 2016 to 2017 rate of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we will be a century late in meeting our 2050 goals. So this gets back to what Sam was talking about, is we don't have 50, 80, 100 years to make this change. We have 10, 20, 30 years and really need to get active. And what I'm trying to do in this presentation is to show that in our minds, we're thinking, oh, changing to 100% clean energy by 2040, 20 years, there's no way to do it. And what I'm trying to get across is that it's happening. People are doing it. And we can learn from what's being done, and we can make this transition much more quickly than we think is possible. And the last point, and Margaret hit on this, is we already have the right technology to meet our goals now. But it will take everyone, governments, corporations, and citizens, to make the big changes that are needed. So here in the US, we have more than 165 cities in 8 states already that have committed to 100% renewable energy. 6 cities have achieved it. And we know that each city will have a unique solution. So here in Louisville, we'll rely heavily on efficiency and solar and storage, but also may have some combination of many other fuels, biofuel, renewable natural gas, microhydro, geothermal, demand management, other. Transportation will also have to be key. And I just want to mention that Austin, Texas is an example of a city that has just committed to investing $7 billion to revamp its transportation system to create an advanced 21st century system that will enable it to meet its net zero carbon goals. So I encourage you to look up their website. They're doing tremendous things in that city. And again, another model to look at. Looking at electric vehicles, the growth has been explosive. In 2019, we're seeing a shift from direct subsidies to policy approaches that rely more on regulatory and other structural measures, including zero-emission vehicles mandates and fuel economy standards. Now this, again, we're looking at specific states or sometimes outside of the US. We're not seeing that federally or in Kentucky at this point. But they're sending a clear signal to the auto industry and consumers. Electric vehicles are the future of vehicle technology. The major automakers are moving rapidly to produce more EVs. Some are completely phasing out the internal combustion engine. Cities, too, are rushing to put in the necessary infrastructure. And to date, 17 countries have announced 100% zero-emission vehicle targets, or the phase out of internal combustion engine vehicles through 2050. According to the International Energy Agency, China is leading the way in electric vehicle adoption, followed by Europe and then by the US. Similarly, with energy storage, a new Wood Mackenzie report projects that energy storage deployments will spike dramatically in 2021, driven by large-scale utility procurements. The report forecasts that U.S. energy storage market will grow from 1.2 gigawatts in 2020 to over 7 gigawatts in 2025, which represents a six-fold growth in the next 5 years. So things are happening very, very quickly. We know that utility responses are going to be key to success. And while LG&E has been slow to adapt to the reality of a 100% renewable powered future, other utilities are showing the way. Xcel Energy, based in Minneapolis, which serves 3.6 million customers across 8 states, has committed to be 80% carbon-free by 2030, 100% carbon-free by 2050. Avangrid and PNM Resources announced they will merge to create one of the largest clean energy companies in the U.S. Combined, these two companies will own 10 regulated utilities in 6 states with renewable resources in 26 states, serving more than 4 million customers and representing a combined $8.3 billion enterprise value. And the Northern Indiana Public Service Commission company, I'm not sure, NIPSCO, which is just to the north, is a very interesting model to look at because they were dealing with a similar situation where they were predominantly coal-powered very recently. And in 2018, they did an integrated resource plan that found that if it entirely replaced its coal plants by 2028, it could provide electricity to its 460,000 customers and save more than $4 billion over 30 years. It found that eliminating coal from its portfolio was its cheapest option, and a portfolio of solar storage, wind, and demand management with a small amount of market purchases was its most cost-effective, cheaper even than converting to natural gas. The similarities with the Louisville situation and what Northern Indiana was dealing with create a compelling case to take to LG&E about why they are continuing to pour major money into these antiquated coal plants as opposed to investing in these future energy technologies. Currently, the company is investing in 3 large solar plants projects with storage that will bring 1 gigawatt of solar energy capacity online by 2023. So as I said, when we look elsewhere, people are not waiting, they're moving ahead aggressively. So there are many issues with LG&E, and I'm just going to touch on a couple. LG&E is currently structured as an energy monopoly, which is already mentioned. So Louisville and LG&E must work together if the city is to reach its 100% renewable energy commitment, or the other alternative is for the city to look at other utility arrangement options, which is a very complex undertaking. But some of the conflicts that we're experiencing are the solar share program that LG&E put in place is a monopoly model that is high priced and all the profits go to the utility, versus what we had advocated for and many communities are adopting is a community solar model where profits are shared between the utility and the residential or company investor. So community solar is a democratic solution, and it moves solar investing more quickly, and it keeps costs lower. Similarly, LG&E currently operates with what are called sleeved PPAs, power purchase agreements, where all the electricity generated must be sold to the utility, and the utility then sells the energy to customers. This is compared to standard PPAs, which sell where the producer or the contracting company that produces the electricity sells that electricity directly to the consumers, and that helps them keep the costs much lower. Then Sam mentioned this very critical aspect that LG&E continues to fund fossil fuel infrastructure at high levels and to pass the cost for those investments in fossil fuels onto the customers through rate increases. So this is a very critical problem that needs to be addressed, probably both at the level and possibly also at the state level through the PSC, the Public Service Commission. Another example is LG&E's resisted working with the city to convert streetlights to LEDs. And a recent analysis shows that the potential for city annual cost savings for this very simple transition is $1 to $3 million. And then finally, I want to mention that LG&E's slowness to adopt renewables goes against the stated PPL, which is its home company, clean energy strategy to decarbonize. So on the next slide, it shows the things that PPL has committed to, a multifaceted decarbonization strategy. And so that raises the question, can PPL shareholders be a leverage point to pressure LG&E to adopt renewables more quickly by pushing PPL to enforce a stronger decarbonization strategy with LG&E. So we're looking for all our leverage points, and that is one possibly to consider. So we in Louisville are lucky to have a mayor who very much supports the 100% clean energy goals of the resolution, the Metro Council who got behind the resolution, City Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability that works vigorously with 100% real towards advancing these goals. We're very much looking forward to the energy manager that Marcus Winkler mentioned that will hopefully come on board by the end of this year. That will greatly facilitate forward progress. And hopefully many of you were able to participate in the LSC Summit that was recently held that Ellen was not on to explain, but very, very excellent conference, and there are other highly informative programs throughout the year. The Louisville Sustainability Council, LSC, is a tremendous asset to the community and a networking thing, and they are working towards these goals along with us. So a number of other initiatives are currently being developed through this partnership between 100% Real, the city, and the LSC. And these include we're working to set up a green bank. Margaret talked about that. Green banks are designed to accelerate the shift to a sustainable economy by providing upfront capital that's necessary for energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. Ideally, the loans can be structured in such a way that there is no net cost to the client, with the loan payments being less than the savings in utility expenses. So green capital is an area that is exploding around the country, and these funded projects have both economic and environmental advantages because they both lower expenses and they reduce emissions and energy use. We're also working with the LSC and city to develop a multi-stakeholder climate advisory council. This is a mechanism for prioritizing public participation in the planning, monitoring, and implementation of the 100% renewable energy goals that have been set. It gives all major community stakeholders a seat at the table, which in turn increases buy-in and impact as our city charts a new energy path for our community. And we're also working with the library to develop a demonstration project that would be placed at the main library, solar with storage installation, and a large educational display. We've been in discussion. The Library Foundation has said they would fundraise for this project, but because of the COVID and some other things that have been happening, no timeline is set to this date, but this is a project that will go forward. And finally, what can you do to help? Sam and Margaret both talked about these things. The big thing is that it's going to take all of us. It's important for people to exercise their voice in speaking with the mayor's office and speaking with Metro Council, writing letters to the editor, using social media, creating media events. Another way to organize is to work through the groups with which you are affiliated, your church group, where you work, how we socialize. We can work with these groups to educate the members and to build consensus for individuals and the group to act in support of the resolution goals. For those who feel a strong commitment, please join 100%.
I think we lost Nancy right at the very end of her presentation, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. You've given us an enormous amount of information, an enormous amount of number of things to think about. And at this point, I'd like to, if you have questions, and I'm sure many of you have questions, please write them into the chat room, right in the center of the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to record all these and deal with them. And it's my pleasure now to introduce our final speaker. And I'd like to speak about the Reverend Dawn Cooley, a Unitarian minister of 7 years in Louisville. She joined the Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light as executive director 1 year ago. She is passionate about climate justice and how it intersects with other urgent justice issues. She is a member of the Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice faith planning team. In the past 6 months, she spent quite a bit of time downtown with the racial justice protests, ministering at the connection between climate justice, racial justice, and public health. And I'm glad to mention these things at this point because the Louisville Sustainability Council Summit on Thursday really emphasized especially the racial justice issues that are related to this, which we need to think about. And they had very inspiring African-American women speakers who dealt with that. I would like us maybe in the future, I thought to myself as I was listening to Nancy, maybe we should actually think about another session talking about these issues. But anyway, tonight, Dawn is going to just introduce us to the organization that she leads, Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light. And this is my opportunity again to thank KIPL for being a joint host and sponsor of this evening. Over to you, Dawn.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you, everyone. It's good to be here today. And rather than talk, Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light created a video to introduce you to our organization that I'm going to share with you. And while that video is playing, I will be typing our website into the chat so you can get to it easily. And with no further ado, here is that video.
Many times we watch the cardinal fly through our Kentucky skies. How many times we hear the warbler's song proclaiming the day, today and every day, today and every day. How many times the tide rolls in.
Hi, I'm the Reverend Dawn Cooley, and I am the Executive Director of Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light.
Life in the deepest blue, green, gray sea, and the rain and the breeze, today and every day, today and
The first is through education. We provide workshops and guest speakers that you can bring to your faith community to help educate the community on issues ranging from sustainability to how much energy your faith community uses, to issues that are before national and local legislatures. The second way is through advocacy at the local, state, and national levels. At Kentucky IPL, over the last year, we have had many conversations directly with elected officials, and we've helped to facilitate many more. Action might look like shareholder advocacy, such as when we organized individuals to speak at the PPL annual meeting against the pipeline that would run through Bernheim Forest. Action may also look like signing our organization's name onto petitions to help give them heft and weight. Action can also look like rallies and protests, such as the There Is No Climate Justice Without Racial Justice rally that was held in downtown Louisville earlier this year. Thank you for supporting Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light. And don't forget to check out our website for more ways you can be involved.
So that's just a little bit about Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light. It's one of the other things that we do is partner with faith communities on events like this. And it has been such a joy to partner with both 100% Renewable Energy Alliance Louisville and St. Paul's Methodist Church. So it is good to be here, and I think it is time to turn it over to questions. We invited folks we invited you to put your questions in the chat, and let me pull that chat up. It keeps moving around on me. I apologize. So one of the questions we had, Sam, was actually really early in your presentation, and that was if the costs that you were quoting actually included the cost of the land that was necessary to put the solar panels on.
Yes, it does. But of course, it's an approximation. We really don't know where the land is going to be, so we don't know exactly how much it's going to cost. So there's a lot of variability, and these are kind of rough figures I'm giving you. Some people would say it's considerably cheaper, and others would say it's going to cost more. I should also mention that I saw one of the other questions was about the longevity of a system like this. And the longevity is wonderful. Solar panels last 30, 40, 50 years. So if they pay for themselves in 10 years, you've got another 20, 30, 40 years after that where they're going to keep putting out power. Require very, very little maintenance, maybe none. So that's the beauty of solar.
Another of the questions was if there are any energy-related bills that are coming before the state legislature in 2021 and that we should start organizing to deal with.
And the answer to that is yes. We're not expecting a lot to come out of the legislature this year, but there is a group that's called the Solar Advocacy Group, which is organized around protecting net metering, which is the legal basis of the solar industry in Kentucky and elsewhere. But they're also working with the Public Service Commission. See, the problem that we're having in Louisville is that the Public Service Commission, which regulates utilities, is a state organization. And Louisville is subject to that. And Louisville is very much one Democratic party, and Frankfurt is the other party. So a lot of what we try to do doesn't get through Frankfurt, and Frankfurt controls the Public Service Commission. But we're still submitting a lot of requests to the PSC, and we're expecting to get a lot of reform. One of the main things that we're trying to get through the state is the idea of separating the grid, the electrical grid, from electrical generation. You see, the grid has to be a monopoly, and that's okay, because you can't have 3 or 4 different companies all with their wires going into your house. But the generation of electricity does not have to be a monopoly. In fact, it's better if it's distributed. That is, that we have lots of small systems scattered all over the place feeding into the grid. That's the model we're looking for. So we want to keep the natural monopoly of the grid, but we want to open up the generation of electricity to the market forces. You know, that rings true with the American spirit. So that's what we're trying to do on the state level.
Another legislative question. How does the municipal burden of the state pension crisis affect support for transitioning municipal services, vehicles, et cetera, to renewable?
I can't handle that one.
Anyone else? Nancy, do you know? All right. So we're sure somebody knows the answer to that question, but we're going to have to follow up with you to figure that one out. Let's see. Sorry, I'm scrolling through looking for some questions. I think, did I miss anything? You addressed how long panels are out. And you addressed the life of panels. Yes, Nancy's presentation. I think, Nancy, can we make your presentation available? Somebody is asking.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Great. Oh, and actually, Julie Donna is here. Julie is one of the co-organizers for the Louisville Sustainability Summit. And Julie says the municipal cuts definitely affect how sustainability is implemented. Julie, do you want to take a minute and go ahead and share some of those key learnings? Let me unmute you. Some of the key learnings from the Sustainability Summit that was just yesterday or Thursday. Time, boy, time is different these days.
Yeah, so I'm actually, besides one of the lead organizers for the summit, I'm the sustainability specialist at the Louisville Metro government. So just the comment on the municipal budget, it definitely, as I think Sam touched on, even though we passed this resolution, implementation of the resolution is really up to, it's not necessarily going to be free. And so I think that's something that Marcus Winkler has also said that he's very cognizant of. However, I also, again, helped organize the Louisville Sustainability Summit, which I've been glad to hear that people really found it, educational and enjoyable. And our theme of the summit was the climate crossroads, looking at the intersections of climate change and social justice. So to keep it really fast, we had our keynote speaker, Elizabeth Yampierre, who is the board chair of the Climate Justice Alliance. And so she talked really about what a just transition means and how, of course, we're going to have to overhaul our infrastructure for this, overhauling our fossil fuel infrastructure independence. But we're also going to need to make sure that just transition doesn't disproportionately impact any communities and is actually going to be beneficial for all through green jobs with living wages and creating healthier communities. So one important takeaway from me was she talked about how a just transition will require just relationships. And so that requires everyone to be working together, forming strong alliances, and knowing that we all have a part to play. And not all of us are playing the same parts because not all of us are contributing to climate change equally. Actually, those who are impacted most by climate change are those who are, those who are impacted most by climate change are contributing to it the least. So we need to be cognizant of that. Be cognizant of the balance of power when you're moving in groups and moving toward coalitions and working together, but also building those strong alliances to really create a movement for the level of change that we need.
Excellent. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for being available on the spur of the moment. I'm going back to Margaret's 5 C's, right? And this is community and connections and collaboration. So thank you all so much. I would like to thank you all so much for joining us this evening for this event. I know that we still have questions. This video will be made available. It'll be on the Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light Facebook page, and it'll be on our YouTube. And we'll make sure that we've got all the addresses of folks who have registered. So we'll be able to send out Nancy's a presentation to you. And to wrap everything up, we have a very, very special treat. I'd like to invite you to listen to live music from John Gage. John, are you there?
There we go. It's an honor to be here. This is a song I wrote several years ago called Circles of Sun. And I want to say hats off to all of you, Interfaith Power and Light, everybody, for the amazing work you've done. Just the persistence of it, staying always there, making the case and not letting them turn away from it. So bless you all. Is that coming through okay? The earth holds the tree, the leaves hold the sunshine, the limbs hold the wind holds the clouds fill the oceans when the raindrops pour. The oceans are holding the shore. The sea and the shore, hand in hand, greet the dawning of life, footprints in the sand. From the very beginning to the place where we stand, we're drawing our life from the land. In its circular motion, the moon moves the ocean, gives us the notion of true harmony. The cycle enfolds us, creation holds us in the heart of life's great mystery. We're travelers all on this little blue ball. Hear the sounds of the people, hear the wild birds call, hear the voices of creatures blending as one. Together we circle the sun. In its circular motion, the moon moves the ocean, gives us the notion of true harmony. The cycle enfolds us, creation holds us in the heart of life's great mystery. We're travelers all on this little blue ball. Hear the sounds of the people, hear the wild birds call, hear the voices of creatures blending as one. Together we circle the sun. Together we circle the sun. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That was lovely. Thank you to all our presenters. Thank you, St. Paul's. Thank you, 100% Real. It has been a blessing. I invite you all to switch real quick to gallery view, and you can all wave at each other as we go ahead and sign off.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Beautiful.
Good night.
Night. Thank you for coming.